And welcome everybody to Rock M Radio. This is the beginning of a brand new episode of Dive Cuts. We are live on YouTube for Rock M Plus subscribers. It's season 8 already, and we're here to talk about your Missouri basketball Tigers as the only podcast strictly talking about the Missouri basketball Tigers. I'm your host, Sam Snelling. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll see me on the left. Um, Make sure you hit that like button, the subscribe button, all that kind of stuff. Help us grow the channel a little bit. You'll notice that there's somebody different looking on the right side of the screen. That would be Matt Watkins. Matt Harris is usually the guy on the right, and Harris, by golly, it's his wife's birthday, so we wish Elle a happy birthday, and we've got Matt Watkins at Data Mizzou on Twitter, Blue Sky, and the Rockin' Plus forums. Matt, how are you?
Doing well. How are you?
I am ready to talk about some Tigers. I feel like it's been a while. It was a long week, um, because there were no victories, and it felt like the week was long. I also think man, I really like when they play on Tuesday, because you get that game like Tuesday, and then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday is like forget about it day, and then you're back playing again. Wednesday feels like a long time to wait for them to play again, especially after going 0 for 2 last week. So we're going to start a little bit, recap a little bit of the Tennessee game, general thoughts, recap of the Texas A&M game, general thoughts. We'll look ahead to what's coming up this week. Missouri's traveling to Georgia over the weekend. They host Oklahoma on Wednesday. But the Tennessee loss, we have covered ad nauseum on the forums. There's been, written words talking about the amount of shots that the Volunteers made that they normally don't make. And then of course, they go down to Oklahoma and carry on that momentum. And I think they made like 9 of their first 11 shots and made 6 of their first 7 threes, and blew Oklahoma out down there. Basically with the same recipe of what they did against Missouri. Missouri was able to kind of hang with them through their own shot making, but it was a little frustrating still to sort of watch a team who normally doesn't make shots make a lot of shots, and in a game where, as well as Missouri played and as well as they shot the ball, a lot of games are going to come out of Knoxville with the win, playing the way that they did.
Yeah, I mean, Mizzou got off to a tough start, which was a common thread last week. But there was a pretty rough stretch in the second half offensively for about 6-7 minutes, and combine that with the start to the game, so about 10 minutes overall. But the other 30 minutes, Mizzou played about as well as anyone's ever going to play against Tennessee offensively. And the frustrating thing about it is that once Mizzou started running out and getting buckets, Tennessee all of a sudden found their footing, which had never happened. I watched several of their games, and I think Tennessee made more shots in the game against Mizzou than I saw them make in the prior 3 games combined, which isn't statistically true, but from what I saw, it is. So it was frustrating in that respect, and then also what the shooting opened up for Tennessee to be able to do offensively and get points in the paint. Mizzou had a game plan to stop that, and Tennessee effectively shot them out of it. So it's not only that Mizzou played well, I think they had the right plan going in. It didn't work, and you tip your cap to Tennessee for that. But, Mizzou made a few errors, I think, and we discussed this on the forums a little bit about how I thought they came out with the press a little bit too late. How that ended up impacting the game, that's up for debate. But when you see a team that's basically scoring every time down, and it doesn't matter whether it's against man or zone, I think you have to change something up and try and break the rhythm, if nothing else, to try and give them a different look. Whether you get turnovers or not, slow them down, just do something different. Mizzou did that, but it wasn't until they had to do it at the end of the game to try and shorten up the possessions. So, not a big mistake, but something that I probably would have liked to see done differently. But I mean, they shot the ball well. What can you say? I mean, Tennessee played a good game. Mizzou played a good game for the most part. You're going to lose those games in this conference this year. Tennessee's probably a 1 seed. You played them on the road. They played really well. That's usually the recipe for a loss.
Yeah. I think like that's, generally just sort of like the frustrating part for, for myself and for a lot of fans is like you reach the point, especially coming out of the, at a halftime where you're able to extend the lead. They got the lead up to 11. It looked like they were able to kind of control the tempo. They were able to kind of speed things up, play the way that they wanted to play. They were getting good looks in the half court, and there's really not a lot of teams that are going to put up 1.21 points per possession against the Vols. So to do that, and again, like, Tennessee just came out and made 10 threes and on 15 shots, which, like that's just going to happen sometimes. So frustrating, but not a bad loss. I think the thing that I'm going to flip to the next game is that the goal really going into last week had to be like, if we could get out of this 1-1 and feel really good. They really, I was far more frustrated by the way that the A&M result sort of played out than anything that happened to Tennessee. The Tennessee team comes out, makes shots. You play well, you make your shots. They made more. You tip your cap. It was like the opposite of that. A&M. They're one of like the least pleasing basketball teams to watch. Take the floor. Like really, it's a toss up between Texas A&M and it. Like I enjoy Mississippi State more this year than I have like the last couple under Jans. But that same kind of brutal style of basketball, Matt Harris likes to call it negative basketball. We're going to offensive rebound you to death. We're going to be very, very physical on defense. That very, very soft 1-2-2 zone, full court 1-2-2 zone that they do to slow you down, to make you take up, 8 seconds to get the ball at the floor so you have to, delay the amount of time you can get, into running your offense. And then for them to not have a good game shooting the basketball, for you to match them on the glass. I think I had Missouri at plus 0.01 of expected rebounds, which is something that they have not been able to do. And, since Dennis Gates has gotten here, is negate A&M's advantage on the glass. They did that, however, with a lineup that wasn't necessarily going to get them a whole lot of points down the stretch, and it did cost them offensively. Especially at a point when I thought, I think when Tamar Bates hit a three, I want to say it was about 4 or 5 minutes to play, to put Missouri up 5. Like I kind of felt like that was the breathing room that they needed, to kind of get things moving more in their direction because they were having success, kind of going into the the transition game. Half court wasn't great. I think you've noted that on the forums, but just lacking offensive execution down the stretch and not being able to convert your opportunities in the half court when you really needed them, and not having a lineup necessarily on the floor that was going to help you do that.
Yeah, I felt, and I mentioned this in the Verdict podcast, but I feel that playing these games back to back with a short layoff contributed. Tennessee, although Mizzou shot the ball really well and scored the ball really well, is still a hard team to play against. They want to beat you up. It's not the same way.
They're a very, very physical basketball team.
they're not the way that Texas A&M beats you up, but they still want to beat you up. And having to play those two games in quick succession, especially with Texas A&M being the second one, which whatever you think of Tennessee physically in the post, what was the guy's name? Era.
Milicic or
no, the other
Akpara?
Eastern European guy from a few years ago that just took cheap shot after cheap shot.
Oh shoot.
Anyway, post that guy era, A&M
he was an Igor or something.
Yeah, post that guy era, we'll just say that A&M takes the mantle for wanting to beat the hell out of you. Tennessee's physical, super physical. Texas A&M takes it up to another notch, and having to play that 2 days later, even on your home court, that takes a lot out of you physically, especially when
Uros Plavsic.
There you go. Especially when you're not shooting the ball well, and I think that is part and parcel with playing that way. Is that it takes a lot out of you, and you're having to commit so much focus and intensity on not turning the ball over, getting on the glass. You've got all these other things to worry about, not getting your head knocked off. Shooting is something Mizzou hangs its hat on and being its most efficient self. And the shots just weren't falling. That was the entire Verdict podcast, was all the open shots they missed. And maybe not open, but open shots for a Caleb Grill, open shots for Tamar Bates, open shots.
Open.
What's that?
I said they were pretty open.
They were pretty open, and I had 14 clips from that game where Mizzou missed good looks on jump shots. And if any one of those shots goes in, just one, the result's likely different.
Yeah.
And they didn't. And that's the thing. It's frustrating because Mizzou normally makes those shots, but I think in context, it's not terribly surprising that they had a tough shooting day, just because you're playing with heavy legs after playing a few days before. You're playing against a team who plays football on the court, and you've got all these other things to worry about. That shooting is just it took the back burner. You're losing your legs a little bit, and they didn't go in, and that's what it boils down to for me,
They Wednesday, quick turnaround, and on top of that, Texas A&M had the week off.
Correct. Yeah.
And to be fair here, this is basically the same situation as what Missouri did to Mississippi State. Missouri had the week off. Mississippi State was coming off. I don't remember. Was it Alabama that they played? But I think it was on a Wednesday. They played Alabama on a Wednesday. Mm-hmm. Now they were at home. So, like that home game and then a home game, but still to play Alabama, the way Alabama plays with their pace, and the fact that you have to be so mentally engaged, to play Alabama because of the way that they play and their constant offensive pressure, to turn around in a couple days and host a team who, Missouri was champing at the bit to get out there and, and prove that they're an upper echelon team in the SEC. And I think a lot of the same sort of thing happened, to Missouri, just from a mental standpoint. There's a lot that is exhausting. And those are two very exhausting teams to play against. And
they're two very good teams. I mean, they are. When you look at the resumes, Tennessee's the number 1 seed, Texas A&M's the number 2. How many teams are going to go 2-0 against that schedule in that same format? Very, very few. Auburn, maybe. Duke, maybe. How many teams are going to win one? Maybe 10. It's a tough draw. Mizzou should have won one. I tallied up the math, and I think that in the A&M game, Mizzou was minus 6 points expected behind the arc, and against Tennessee, there were minus 12 points expected when you adjust both teams to their 3-point shooting averages on the season. Mizzou, with normal shooting numbers in both those games, goes 2-0. But it didn't happen, and jump shooting is volatile. There's just no other way to say it, and we saw that this week. You can do everything right. You can go in there and rebound. You can go in there and protect the ball. And if your shots don't fall, it's all for naught. A&M hit one big shot at the end of the game. That's literally the only big shot they hit all game. and they made it. You know,
Well,
good
Taylor
for
did
them.
have another three that I want to say that like after that Bates three, Taylor I think answered that with a three because
It's
he
possible.
did he make, I think Taylor, did he make two or three threes?
I think
I
he
just
had
had the
two.
thing up.
Yeah.
Um, he was 3 for 9 from 3-point range.
Okay.
I think there was even an air ball there. So yeah, he's not shy about putting the ball up. I you know I I didn't love the end of game management from the head coach. In particular, as happy as I was, and I think I said as much in study hall on this. As happy as I was that we got to see some extended run from Marcus Warwick, who I think both of us have sort of felt has gotten a little bit of the short end. As far as like the minutes rotation stuff, in several games back, to see him get some extended run is good. He's still not your best defender. I think he's a better defender than he's maybe given credit for.
He's getting better.
He's gotten better. He made some great plays off the ball, generated some steals. He's still not the guy that I want defending Wade Taylor on the final possession. On top of just the simple fact that like he's not a great defender. I think he's good enough like during the regular parts of the game. But in that situation, you want your best defender, and I want like Tony Perkins is also 6'3", like 6'4", maybe. Like Marquez is what, 6 foot, 6'1".
I think he's listed at 6'2", but for whatever that's worth.
Yeah,
everyone's 2 inches taller in the program than they are in reality. But
well, I mean, when we were at practice, Tony Perkins is substantially tall. Like I think he could be like a legit 6. Like maybe he's not quite 6'4", but he's close.
That's what he's listed at, 6'4".
Yeah, and let's see, Work's listed at 6'3". I don't believe that. I think that's definitely an embellishment. He's probably closer to 6'1". But yeah, just having that added size, and hopefully being able to affect the shot. I still would have liked to see more from Mark Mitchell, but just being on the floor, over like the last 10 minutes or so, I thought Mitchell was really playing well and giving them a lot offensively. I don't think that A&M, despite being a very physical team, they're not a very big team. And I think Pharrell Payne's really the only guy that has sort of like plus athleticism on their front line. And I think Solo Washington is a good athlete. But Coleman's not a guy he's a positional defender. Garcia is even a positional defender. Those guys aren't really going to affect Mark Mitchell, trying to attack the rim. And I realized maybe he wasn't quite giving you what Josh Gray and Gray and Marcus Allen, to their credit, were doing a great job on the glass.
Mm-hmm.
But like you lost this game because you weren't able to score.
Yeah, I agree with you on Warwick at the end of the game, even though I don't think he did a terrible job defending that. Any space is too much space with Wade Taylor, but credit to Warwick, it was still a contested jump shot, from 3-4 feet outside the arc. It's not the guy I would have went and guarded him, but it's not like he just completely lost the plot either. But the thing I think that was disappointing to me, I guess, about the A&M game is it took a while for Mizzou to get some defensive traction in that game. They gave up 38 points in the first half against a team that wasn't shooting well. They continued giving up points. Mizzou started scoring points to start the second half, but they were only making small gains, chopping 9 points down to 6 or 7 or maybe 5, and then it ballooned back up a little bit. They weren't getting stops. So in years past, Dennis Gates didn't really have the option to bring in a defensive lineup to stop what A&M was doing. This year he does. However, the trade-off is they're not as good offensively. We're not to the point yet where you have guys who can do everything at all times. Mizzou has the guys who can do a lot of things, but you don't have a lineup who can go out there and shut down an A&M on the inside and still score a lot of points. So I remember looking it up, and I think there was about a 7-minute stretch in the second half where A&M didn't score. Not a single point, not a free throw, nothing. And, I don't love that lineup offensively, but Dennis Gates kept riding it, and Marquez Warrick was part of that. And I can kind of see the virtue in playing him with that group of guys because there's not many players on Mizzou's teams who can generate offense for himself like Marquez Warrick can.
Right.
So, you give a little bit with defense with him, but you allow the other 4 defenders to be on the court, shut them down, and try and eke out enough offense through Warrick or other guys playing through him that I saw the virtue of it. My biggest problem with the end of the game is Mizzou got the ball back with about 49 seconds left after the free throw to tie it up, and they didn't even think about going for a 2-for-1 at the end of the game. I hated the fact that they took a shot. Not only was it not a great shot, but they took it at the point in the clock where A&M could hold for the last bucket. I don't know if you want to call a timeout there, rush up the floor. I don't encourage taking a bad shot, but look for an early clock look. If there's ever a point in time to do that, that is when it is, because then you put the pressure on A&M to execute offensively and not either hold for the last shot or overtime. And that kind of burned me a little bit. And I think Dennis Gates might have mentioned that in his post-game press conference, that he wishes he would have called the timeout there. I don't know if he was talking about a 2-for-1, but, I just hate when you allow teams to have the last shot and hold for the last shot when you have the opportunity to do so yourself. And 20 seconds is a lot of time. You have to get it off with 38, 39 seconds left, but 10, 12 seconds, that's enough time to get a quick look. And if you're prepared for it, if you call timeout, just get up there and do it. Maybe pushing it a little bit, but I would have liked to seen something different there.
Yeah. And, they didn't even get a good, it was a decent look, but not necessarily the kind of look that you wanted to see. I thought for me, like the biggest, there were 2 shots I thought that really impacted the way that the game went down the stretch that Missouri missed. The first was Warrick kind of coming up short on about a 15, 16-foot jumper. That was with, I want to say that was 3:21 left. And then on the next possession, actually, Caleb Grill was wide open and missed a 3, which was what, that's one of those things where it's like, he's been so good all year that I was stunned that the shot didn't go in. And
I got it for you, Harry. Let's see if I can bring it up. It's from my verdict trove. Are we up there?
Yeah. Well, looks like it's state.
Oh yeah, it is. All right, keep talking. I'm gonna find this. My bad.
Well, yeah. So essentially, like, just not having the guy who has made all the shots this year. You're gonna have to skip ahead.
Yeah, I got it. I just wasn't prepared for this, but now I am. So this is the shot we're talking about with Caleb Grill here. And when Sam means he was wide open, he was wide open. And as you saw, A&M
it was a horrible miss switch for A&M, and like you could just see the panic in the defense when they realize right here, like, oh shoot, and just
I'm
right on the front of the rim, right on the front of the rim.
I'll pause it here.
Like, that's open. That's an open 3.
And you check the time and score here. We're talking about any one shot. And I'm not singling out Caleb Grill. He's been phenomenal. He's entitled to miss a shot. I'm just saying that when you have games like this and you shoot 23% or whatever from 3-point range, these are the little things that are the difference between beating a top 5, top 10 team and not. And Mizzou missed. It happens. I have 14 of those clips that are all in the verdict. Go watch them. They're all there. So it's not just the one. It's just this is the most clutch, highest percentage shooting, and most open shot of the examples, which is why I left it for last. What can you do? You talk about, well, their half-court offense stunk. It didn't perform well. They scored 26 points from half-court primary offense. That's not good. But they had shots. It's not like it wasn't operating as it was supposed to. They just didn't execute. And there's a difference.
The good news is Missouri doesn't have to play a ranked basketball team for a little bit. I believe their next ranked team that they're going to play is Alabama. That's next Wednesday. So coming up, I mean, like there are no real breaks in the SEC. Like the biggest break that you get is going to be like South Carolina or LSU. Teams that are sort of teetering on that quad 2 to quad 3 range. If they come into your building. But this week, Missouri is hosting Oklahoma, and Oklahoma is a team.
Keep talking.
But Oklahoma is a team that is desperate for a win, and a team that is amazingly still 36th in KenPom. Some of that is probably doing some work on the back of a absolute hammering of Vanderbilt. They have some decent wins since conference play started in Vandy and Arkansas. And, but really Arizona's probably helping them out a bit too, because they beat Arizona. Louisville, another team that's sort of continuing to play better and better, in Michigan. So that's 3 wins of the 3 teams that they all beat in the non-conference schedule. And it looks like things are not going well. But they also like this is life in the SEC. So they beat Vanderbilt at home by 30 points, and then they are rewarded by going on the road to Auburn. And they were competitive in that game for a lot of the game, and then things kind of got away from them at the end. Ended up losing by 28. Come home, and then Tennessee shoots the lights out, like we said. Tennessee comes out. They're able to sort of assert their will defensively. Oklahoma's not able to do much. I think Jeremy Fears, their star freshman, is dealing a little bit with a thigh bruise, which I'm sure is not ideal for what you want when you have to play Tennessee. But it is one of these games where OU's 36th in KenPom. It's a quality team, but it's a team that you should beat. Missouri's favored by 7. This is a game you need to win by more than 7, in my opinion. I think you really want to come out and play really well and kind of show that you're putting separation between a team who's probably a borderline NCAA tournament team right now. A difference between being that team and being a team who's hopefully still able to kind of get into the picture for a protected seed in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah. So what I shared here, and this is going to piggyback into your point, is I ran my latest bracket projections, the at-large projections, and the numbers out here to the left of all of these teams are the projected seeds in the projection for all the SEC teams on Mizzou's schedule. So you can see there's 16 games against teams currently projected to be in the NCAA tournament. And this last stretch of games, Mizzou played at an 11 seed, at home against a 6 seed, on the road against a 7 seed, on the road against a 1 seed, and at home against a 2 seed. that lightens up a little bit. However, we're still talking about teams that I think are NCAA tournament teams, and that starts with Oklahoma. And I just looked over their numbers today, and they're a really good offensive unit. I think a lot of their success has come from long-term three-point shooting variance, but it's still holding up. They hit a lot of threes, and teams generally don't make a lot of threes against them. Tennessee kind of threw that in the wind and knocked down, I think you said 9 of the first 11. But they are really good on the perimeter. They can shoot the ball well, and they defend on the perimeter really well. And they prevent teams from getting into the paint. However, when teams do get to the rim, it's usually a bloodbath. And that's on both ends of the court. Oklahoma gets to the rim a lot, but they don't convert a whole lot there. So, this is a rare opportunity, compare and contrast to the last 2 games, where you need to get the inside game going, whether that's with Mark Mitchell attacking mismatches, Tony Perkins getting downhill. Getting those types of guys going early in the game against Oklahoma can pay big dividends because they're probably going to shoot the ball pretty well. If they shoot 40%, I'm not going to be surprised, from behind the arc. Unlike Tennessee, they are basically the exact opposite of a Tennessee or A&M. They are more like what Mizzou was 2 years ago. They can put up a lot of points. Their defense isn't as bad as Mizzou's a couple years ago, but they are vulnerable because they don't have a lot of size and interior depth. So, yes, I agree that it would be nice for Mizzou to come out and put their foot down and really run them off the court. However, I do think it's going to be a tough game for them, especially if Oklahoma starts getting hot and Mizzou has any residual effects from the last game shooting-wise, which I certainly hope not to be the case. But the benefit to this, unlike the last 2, is you should be able to go into the rim and have success doing it.
I always hate three-point shooting defense as a stat because, as many people listening will know and can attest, I am a big believer that, it's just how shots go sometimes. Sometimes they go in, sometimes they don't. Their three-point shooting defense is 7th, 28.8%. Their two-point defense is 299th. That's a stark difference. So their effective field goal percentage is kind of balancing out to give them the look of a team that's pretty solid defensively. I did say before the season started, I didn't really like a lot of what sort of Porter Moser was doing as a roster rebuild. I think some of that, to his credit, is because he was dealing with some issues with his NIL situation. I don't really think Oklahoma's committed a lot of finances to making their basketball team very competitive. But I think Moser's a great coach. I really do. I think when you coach at a place like Oklahoma, you have to be creative, and he's gotten creative. I thought they were going to have to shoot a lot of threes in order to be successful. And they've done that. They don't go crazy. They're not like a team that only shoots threes. But they're shooting about 43% of their field goal attempts are from behind the arc, which is top 100, but nothing crazy.
Right. They are 96th in 3 points attempted, and Mizzou is 97th, just behind them.
So the advantage to being a good three-point shooting team, so they've got Jelon Moore, who's at 43%. They've got Duke Miles, who's at 44%. They've got Bryson Godine, who's at 45%. The value there is that when you have shooters that can space the floor, it leaves driving lanes open. Missouri is a good example of that. Missouri's been a team who, when they shoot the ball well, it opens a lot of things up for them on the inside. It allows Mark Mitchell to operate. It allows Anthony Robinson to be able to drive. But this is a game where I'd really like to see a couple of the sophomores who have struggled the last few games, and Trent Pierce and Anthony Mitchell, hopefully be able to find some footing and kind of help guide Missouri back into the win column here. because like I think one of the things that's sort of holding this team back from really kind of taking that next step is some of the inconsistent play we've seen from some of the younger guys. So hopefully they can get that corrected against Oklahoma, because I think it's a good opportunity for those guys.
Yeah, there are no easy games in this league. Oklahoma at home is one of the easier games in this league, and it's a game you can lose if you don't play well. That's all there is to it. It's the days of getting South Carolina or Mississippi State rolling in here at 200 plus in KenPom. Those days are over. You're playing a tournament team Wednesday. You're playing a likely tournament team Saturday on the road. It's I want to impress upon people, if it hasn't been already, that this league is absurd. There are no off days. The closest thing Mizzou gets is South Carolina at home. They haven't won a conference game yet, but they put the fear of God into some teams in Columbia, South Carolina. They've played. Yeah. They played A&M well. They played. I don't forget who it was that I predicted they beat. They didn't, but it was close. It's just they've.
It was Florida.
It might have been Florida. Yeah. They are Mizzou from a year ago.
They should have beaten Florida. They were ahead of Florida, like by 5 or 6 points, like with a couple minutes to go, and just couldn't hang on.
Right.
Like just coughed the ball up in turnovers.
When you look at them, they're better than Mizzou was a year ago, but the same things happen. They play competitive against better teams this year, but just small things fall apart down the stretch. And if that doesn't happen one game, they can beat a good team. There are no bad teams.
Look at what happened to LSU and Ole Miss like over the weekend. Did you watch the end of that? Like, because we were talking about it. Like LSU legitimately had that game won. They were up 9 and just absolutely melted down the stretch. And you could see it. And I even said something as I was watching the game. I'm like, I really think like Matt McMahon should have like called a timeout when they were up 9, because you could just sense that his team was getting jittery. And sure enough, he didn't. And most coaches, like, I get it. Like, that's not really a time where you think, oh, I need to get a timeout when we're up 9 and 2 minutes to go. But you could just see that, like, that the nerves were kind of getting cranked up a bit, and because like they're like South Carolina, they haven't won games, and when you're in that position and you haven't won games, like there is a sense as a player when you're just like, okay, like I don't want to screw this up.
Mm-hmm.
And
I mean, Ole Miss is good. They're a good team. You can't do that against them.
Yeah. And so this is we're kind of getting a little sidetracked, but I think it speaks to how good the league is, and that Ole Miss is a top 25 team, went on the road to LSU, and we're about to walk out of there with a loss before like LSU basically, and LSU had to crap their pants in order for Ole Miss to win the game. So I think that speaks a lot. South Carolina is the same way, and we're looking at 2 teams this week who are sub 40 in KenPom, and 2 teams who are really, really going to want to get, like, this would be a huge win for Oklahoma to go on the road and be a top 25 team. Georgia's 4-7 in league. They beat Kentucky at home. They beat Oklahoma at home. They beat South Carolina at home. They beat LSU at home. The only home game that they've lost 2 home games. They lost a squeaker to Mississippi State, another team who, like, Mississippi State did everything they could to lose that game, and Georgia just could not pull it out.
Mm-hmm.
And they lost by 2 points to Auburn.
Right.
So
it's hard.
Yeah, we're not in a situation. We're not in a situation where, like, you expect that you're going to go 2-0. I have said, though, that if Missouri wants to be the team that they think they are, and I think that they can be, and I think you think that they can be, this is a week you go 2-0.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think I would have been if they'd have beat either A&M or Tennessee, I'd have looked at this week and said, like 1-1's fine to accomplish the things that you want to accomplish. I don't think you have that wiggle room this week. I think you have to go 2-0 if you want to be that team. Like if you want to be, like if Missouri wants to be a protected seed in the NCAA tournament, you have to go 2-0 this week.
No, yeah, I would agree with that for sure. And I have no problem with shifting expectations. I do it myself. I mentioned it in the group chat the other night after the Tennessee game that I was disappointed in how they handled it down the stretch. I thought Tamar Bates missed 2 front ends of 1-and-1s. They didn't shift their defense quick enough. They took some really bad shots. I think there was a stretch of 10 straight possessions where they had on 8 of them, they were contested mid-range 2-point shots. That's not winning basketball. And it's true that Mizzou did put up 1.2 points per possession against the number 1 defense, but it's fair to enhance or raise your expectations when you see Mizzou playing as well as they do and hold them to that standard. I'm not saying anyone should be in trouble for this. It's just when I look at it, I'm not analyzing them as a borderline bubble team anymore. I'm analyzing them as the top 5 type team they've played at the level of so far in SEC play. Their Torvik rating is still 3rd in SEC play right now amongst all teams as far as efficiency goes. They're playing like a really freaking good team. However, this last week, the results finally didn't match, and that's frustrating when you're playing better than the results show that you played, which is an exact 180 degree change from year one when Mizzou's results were much better than the level that they were playing. And that's the frustrating thing about it is when you have something here, but just a few small things and it doesn't go. You don't have Dre Golston pumping in 45-footers at the buzzer anymore. As fun as that was, this is a better team, but you got to get the results. And I think this week is a week where you can get those results if you keep playing at that level.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. Something that I don't know that we've necessarily talked. I know we've talked on Slack about it. So for anybody that doesn't know, our Rock'em team has a Slack channel. That we mainly use to talk coverage and whatnot. But me and Matt Harris have our own little private message group, and one of the things that we've talked about is shifting your evaluation from what we thought Missouri was going to be kind of coming into the season, which was a tournament team, or at least a tournament level team, to a team that, quite frankly, can be a protected seed if they take care of business. That's the different level of quality and the shifting of expectations that we've seen since conference play has started. You saw flashes of that against Kansas. You saw flashes of it against Illinois. Since Caleb Grill obviously has become as lethal of a shooter as he's been in SEC play. It makes you think that this team can be a second weekend team in the NCAA tournament. They can play at that level, and when they're playing at that level, they can beat anybody. I don't think that they played their best game at Tennessee. I think that they played a very good game. But you're right. If you fix a couple of those things and they're at the point where those things are fixed, they still win that game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think the last few weeks. Sorry, you were skipping. I thought you were done.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and the thing is, a guy like Anthony Robinson hasn't been playing well the last few weeks. He's your starting point guard, and he's a major impact player on this team, and he's been okay defensively, pretty poor offensively, and he's been fouling guys. I mean, Mizzou beat Mississippi State by 2,000 points, and he had 6 turnovers in the first 10 minutes. The thing is, Mizzou's played really well, and I think they can play a lot better. They just haven't quite reached that next level yet. And this last week felt kind of like a little bit of a slide back because the results weren't there, although I don't think the level of play really dropped off. The level of competition went way up.
Level of competition went way up. They didn't make their shots against Texas A&M, which is always going to be a factor when you're playing good teams. Like, you still have to make shots. I did want to highlight, Tyler mentioned the crowd was ready to blow up if he made that. He's talking about the Caleb Grill shot. I thought the crowd was fantastic on Saturday. I thought, like, considering that Missouri, whenever Missouri made a big play, that building exploded. And so hopefully they can bring that same energy on Wednesday, and we can continue to experience this resurgence of Missouri basketball. This is the best Missouri basketball team in a while. I would like to see them continue to ascend, and I'd like to see, like, Trent kind of get back on the right path, playing better.
And we haven't mentioned his name yet, Jacob Cruz.
Yeah. How about Jake? Cruz kind of stepping up and really providing the offense there in the early goings against Texas A&M, but also
City.
A guy that I feel like we've had to defend a little bit because he hasn't been making shots, but he's been playing well. And I really wish we could get past this thing of, equating playing well with making shots. I thought Missouri played well against Texas A&M. They didn't make shots. There are things that I wish they would have done better schematically. There are things I wish that they would have done better rotationally. But I don't think that they played bad. They got some good looks. The looks didn't go in.
That turnaround jumper he had off the post up late in the game, that was probably the toughest shot anyone made all game. And it was a huge shot. I think they were down 3 at that point. If that shot doesn't go in, that might be the game at that point. And he made it. I mean, that is an NBA level shot. He's not an NBA level guy, but that was an NBA level shot. And he played a great game. And we hadn't mentioned it. It just, guys have stepped up and have done well. It's just you can't quite see it until they all do it at the same time. And I don't know if that will ever happen. That's hard. That's a hard thing to ask. But a lot of guys have stepped up this year.
So we're gonna get out of here. Again, Missouri plays Wednesday night against Oklahoma at home. If you're in Columbia, make sure you're there. Yell your heads off. And then Saturday at Georgia. Going to be a tough game. If you're in the St. Louis area, I think on Sunday, Side Project is doing Stout Week. You may see me there if you're into beer stuff. Say hi. Like, I'm always.
We're into Sam Snelling.
I don't know about that. I am always ready to talk Missouri basketball these days. Even this week has not dampened my my excitement for how much fun the season has been. Like, November wasn't always the best, sitting through all those Q4 games, but man, since the calendar turned, this has been a lot of fun. And I'm at the point where I'm so excited just to watch SEC basketball. So I'm looking forward to tomorrow night. I can watch SEC basketball, not have to worry about my own team playing, and get to watch a lot of fun hoops. So we'll be back next week. I'm assuming Matt Harris will be back by that point. We'll let Watkins back into his verdict layer, only to emerge at some point later in the season. Watkins, thanks for hanging out tonight. You have any final words before we get out of here?
Yeah, this is more like a pick and roll. I tend to prefer to work in isolation. So
yeah, it's the 2-man game. There's a little give and go. All right, so thanks everybody for tuning in. If you're not subscribed to Rock M Plus, think of all the stuff you're missing. You're missing episodes of The Verdict. You're missing all the great conversations, the excellent conversations that are happening on a regular basis. They're growing by the day, man. I'm really excited for how things are going. So we'll see you next week, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Have a good night.